And a good afternoon to you. This is a wonderful Wednesday for women, as always, and we are delighted that you're with us today. And for the next 5 weeks, we're excited that the Global Black Women's Chamber of Commerce, in partnership with the Charisma Speakers, which is my company, is presenting Conversations with Sister CEOs. And we are excited and delighted to have you. If you're watching on YouTube, please subscribe, like, and share. And then if you're watching after this airs, subscribe, like, and share, and we love your comments. Those keep us going. But I am so excited today to have one of my partners and my BFFs. Her name is Ingrid Vanderveldt, who we affectionately call Ivy. She is the founder, CEO of EBW, that stands for Empowering a Billion Women, and also EBW Cares, which is so significant during this season of our history and our lives. So welcome, Ingrid.
Welcome. Hello. And I'm saying welcome. Thank you. So it's just so great to see you. I just love our time together and love that you're doing Conversations with Sister CEOs. I am honored to be here on your show. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. And we want to give a shout out to all the EBW family and tribe, but of course the GBWCC tribe that's just now starting. And you can still join us. Go to globalblackwomencc.org. We'll also have the membership link inside our chat. But we were founded 2 weeks before COVID. So we are really birthed in pain, birthed in a pandemic. And so I think that's significant because a lot of businesses are birthed in pain. People think it's rosy, just you start a business, but there is pain in the beginning. So I'm going to throw out a few R's. You know, I like alliteration, and you tell me the R that you resonate with in terms of starting your business. So rested, reboot, restored, re-enter, reopen, renewed, rescind, rediscover, resurge, realign. Are any of those R's words that you've had to deal with in starting a business?
None at all, like none at all. You know, all those words, oh my gosh. I mean, talk about, they really apply. And I'll add one R word that I keep hearing a lot. And I think this is so apropos to where we all are and the work that we get to do together. And that is resilience.
Yes. Yes.
And just resilience. What is our resiliency to bounce back and believe that there, in fact, can be a better future than what we had before COVID? It's at times, I know, and we both experience it, hard to even imagine when you see all the things happening around us. And at the same time, it's this whole idea of, if not you, if not us, if not we, if we don't do it now, then who's going to do it? How are we going to get ourselves back to work safely and, you know, with unity and justice for all? So yeah, resilience. I'll add to your R's, but I love that.
So with brilliance goes resilience. And that's a really, really good word, because a lot of the entrepreneurs who partners with us are brilliant, but are you resilient? And that's a word for business. But there's another R that really brought us together in this limelight. We came together 3 years ago, introduced by an email by Dr. Brian Graham. And it was really love at first sight. Our hearts connected, our spirits connected. But I think that you were doing the UN, something at the UN, and you invited me. And I was getting ready to do my retreat for busy women, and you came and I invited you. And then we've come together in all of our lives, in our personal lives, our professional lives. And I think it's something important, because all of the pictures, I went through all the pictures of us, and we're always hugged up, just like the black and white picture that's center. We're always hugging, which meant like we really, really like each other. And I think that's important in a partnership. But tell us first what empowering a billion women means. What does that mean?
I will. Can I build on just for a moment what you just said?
Yes.
Because I not only like Sujay, I love her as my sister, and it is. I just so love the relationship that we have together, because I think one of the things that has so often held, especially women, back is we believe. I mean, I remember in my first tech company being told, you don't look like, act like, sound like, or talk like any of the CEOs that are funded. You'll never get funded. And I took, actually, I started wearing glasses back then when I didn't need them. Yes. Cut off all my hair, stopped wearing makeup, and tried to dude up and be like one of the guys. And it was horrific. It was this horrible experience because I lost all my confidence. But where I think we're at now, and Sujay, what I love so much about you and our relationship is this opportunity. You know, you can't be what you can't see, and you can't dream if you don't believe. And I think it's important for all of us as women to be like, you know what? You can show up in the rockin' orange red suit with your makeup on, looking gorgeous with this dynamic personality, and do incredible business and make a difference in the world. And I just always love saying, just show up in your fullest beauty, because that's what, no one is you, and that is your power. So I love our relationship,
and that's a big R, because I think businesses and everything in life is really built on relationships. Whether you get the job, whether you don't get the job, it's all about relationships. Whether you move up and advance or enhance, it's about the relationships that you develop. So as you founded EBW, there were some things that happened before you got there. I mean, you were the first entrepreneur in residence at Dell. I mean, this was huge. But all along the way, you developed relationships with the president of Dell and CEO of Dell. But then all along the way, the partnerships that you developed and the relationships that you developed got you to the founding of EBW. So what does empowering a billion women really mean?
Oh, it really means we're not going to stop until the job is done. And that means we have to actually reach and touch and connect with a billion women and do everything that we can in terms of using our life to be in service to help empower. And some folks on our team, Allison Engel and Brett Randell in particular, I know they're watching, and they talk about, it's not even any longer about empowerment. It's about being in power. And how do we empower one another? And you certainly do that in spades in terms of how you lift others up. And so, you know, really that's what we're doing here, helping other women. If we can make the path even a little bit easier from what we experienced from starting, growing, and scaling businesses, we're going to do it, because we know that women, and especially women of color, you are the strongest economic drivers to our global economy. You're starting businesses at a rate that the rest of us could only dream of. And when I think about how are we going to succeed and thrive onto the other side of this, it's not only the empowerment of women together, but it's women of color. Because what you are defining our future, and I am just so grateful that you and I can walk together, recognizing that, yeah, we have very historical differences. We've had things that were tough, harder than others in some areas, and whatever, but we're able to lock arms together and say, you know what? Let's show the world what is it? It's not even being colorblind. It's not that. It's
finding common ground, though. It's really finding
common ground
where we connect. And, you know, so we connected at spirit, we connected at mind, we connected at soul. And I think that was important. All of the interviews we've had, there was a word called call. Everybody felt they were called to what they're doing right now. And you had an experience where you felt called to touch a billion women's lives. Can you tell us a little bit about that calling?
Yes. Well, and thank you. Similar to you, I mean, I always say this up front, because when I first started this journey of empowering a billion women, you know, it to people back then, 10 years ago, it sounded just crazy. Now this is just what we do. And I would say, you know, the only way to explain it is it's a God call in my life. I grew up knowing at the age of 4 that I was going to be a missionary serving women and girls around the world. I just didn't know what that was going to look like. And as I got older and started building businesses and recognizing the power of capitalism to close the wealth gap, how that can provide for our families, our communities, ultimately the world. You and I know we eat, sleep, drink the empowerment of women, because we reinvest 90% of what we earn into family, community, ultimately the world. So the faster we're making money, the faster we're getting this economy back on track. But it really happened in 2010, 2011. I was on the story there it was quite extraordinary. We had just sold the 2 companies that I was an executive of one and CEO of another. And this is really kind of funny, because I had my husband, we were in California, and he's Canadian. Well, now he's a US citizen, but he wanted to buy a ranch. And I was like, babe, like, okay, that sounds really neat, but we don't even own a lawnmower. So what are we going to do with a ranch? And so we decided to rent this ranch in Dallas, Texas, and kind of give it a whirl. Like, could we even do a ranch? And it was on that ranch that I had gone into very deep prayer the day before the call happened. And whereas I thought I had dedicated my life in service to what God called me to do my whole life, really did not happen truly until that moment where I said, scared half to death, but I have committed my life to be in service to what you call me to do. And so I prayed through that. And the next day, I was driving on a dirt road in Dallas, Texas. I know exactly where it was, just like it was yesterday. Just come out of the ranch, driving around the ranch on this dirt road, and I said, "Okay, God, I'm ready for this." And I was so scared. I actually started sweating because in my mind, you mentioned the UN work. I had come out of working with women in the jungles in Uganda, and have sat at the decision tables at the UN. I mean, the whole gamut. And I was like, wow, he could ask me to go back into the jungles of Uganda, and I need to say yes because I made that promise, or it could ask me to do something else. And so I just, as I'm holding on to the wheel, and I remember very clearly looking into the rearview mirror, and I just said, okay, I'm ready. What is it that you need me to do? And the interesting thing about it, and I happen to be Christian, as you know, you talked about Brian Grimm.
Yes.
I co-chair the Religious Freedom and Business Foundation CEO Council, and we're, respectful and loving of belief, non-belief, our religions. Mine happens to be Christianity, and I mention that because in that moment of completely surrendering, the call came back as we. And in the rearview mirror, I actually saw, I mean, this might sound strange, but I'm like, it's just truly my story. I saw, it was this three. I saw an image of three, the Trinity, which was interesting. And it said, what we have been preparing you for your whole life is to do what we need you to do today. And that is empowering 1 billion women by 2020. And Sujay, in that moment, I lost it.
Yeah. So your definition of billionaire is what?
Oh, well, billionaire is she or he who has the potential to impact 1 billion lives. And I think that in that description, we're all part of that. There's 7 billion people on planet Earth, and each one of us can be a billionaire. And that's what I believe we're all called to do. No one is you. That is your power. What is your unique gift out into the world? And how can you bless others and elevate and lift others to achieve their fullest potential? And in that, locking arms, regardless of race, background, socioeconomic status, anything's possible.
And I think it's important. I want to let you know, Dr. Brian Grimm, who introduced us, we partnered together. I was the ambassador for international religious freedom. And from that, in the Obama administration, I met Dr. Brian Grimm, who then introduced me to Ivy, Ingrid, who now is a partner. And so partners don't always look like us. He was white male conservative. I am Black female, but I was in a role, another R, I was in a role that said, you can't just do this by yourself, but it is the we. I had 199 countries in my portfolio, which meant you can't just be an introvert and inclusive. You've got to be an extrovert and be exclusive. You got to make sure that you're including a lot of people. So I wanted to stress that a partner doesn't always look like, sound like, walk like, talk like you, but we find common ground and we find ways that we can do business together. I want to share with those who are listening right now. You're watching Conversations with Sister CEOs, brought to you by the Global Black Women's Chamber of Commerce, the first chamber of commerce that deals solely with Black women-owned businesses. You can join us. And at the end of the show, towards the end, we'll have times for questions and answers. So if you have a question, please put it in the chat box. But subscribe, like, and share this show. We certainly are glad. And we're being joined today by Ingrid Vanderveldt, who's the CEO of Empowering 1 Billion Women, EBW, and EBW Cares. So I want to raise up another R, which really brought us together in terms of partnership, and that's the word racism. Because we're not only experiencing a pandemic of COVID, but we're experiencing a pandemic of racism that has come to the forefront. African Americans have known it all along, but when George Floyd and Ahmaud Arbery and Breonna Taylor were killed very much in a short time span from each other, then all of America got to see what we were experiencing. And Ivy and I had talked about, I have 2 sons that I raised, and we had talked about what it's like raising a Black male in America. But it was really at that moment you were like, what can we do to make a difference? And I shared with her, all the candidates talked about, closing the wealth gap. So right now, we don't need another shoulder to cry on. What we need to do is close that wealth gap and create generational wealth. So I said, we're creating this Chamber of Commerce that you helped me to start. And so what can you do to help us build Black women-owned businesses? And Ingrid came through with a proposal. And what was that, which we're getting ready to do?
Well, and kudos so back to you. And as I'm drinking water, it's just because, and I said to my team, when we talk about this racism, and I hope we'll go back to that for a little bit, it's so horrific that we're even having those conversations the other day we were together again doing a Zoom, and I got teary-eyed and I was like, Ingrid, come on. Because to Sujay's point, it's okay. Let's address and let's solve the issue. And kudos to Sujay, because when I made that call to Sujay, I will never, ever forget her response. And it's a lesson in leadership that all of us can learn. And that was, she paused for a moment when I asked the question, thought through her answer, and was very direct on the delivery. And there was no mistaking what this was about. And Sujay said, Ingrid, if you were a politician, we'd be having one conversation. And it's funny because we do policy initiatives, but that wasn't it. Ingrid, if you were a TV person, we'd be having a different conversation, which in my mind, I was like, well, I used to host a show on CNBC. But Sujay said, you're not. You're a business person. And she said, in the fact that you're a business person, she goes, support us. That's what we need. We need support. And in that moment, I was like, Sujay is absolutely right. And not only that, but I was getting this lesson in leadership, again, that all of us can learn from, that, ask for what it is that you really want and expect that you're going to get it. Because you can't have a Sujay say, we need support, and somehow, regardless of whatever the level of support is, I'm not Michael Dell, I'm Ingrid Vanderveldt. Michael can do one level of financial support, I can do another, but we can all do our part. And it's in that direct ask. You can't say no. If you want to create the change, you have to say yes and then figure it out. So the answer immediately was yes, but I can't take credit there, because again, it wouldn't have happened had Sujay not said what she did. And then we put our heads together and said, okay, so what do we do about this racism issue? What do we do about job creation, closing the wealth gap? And together, developed an idea to say, let's figure out what are the hardest hit cities in the United States. Who are women community leaders who have lost income, maybe reduced income, or just looking for that, like, I want to make bigger impact? And how can we take the resources that we have to surround them and say, okay, now let's help you start a new business, but not totally on your own. Do it with all of our support. And now, until everything is stood up and running on its own, and let's help you build this venture successfully. And in that, you're going to rebuild communities. You're going to rebuild your economy. You're going to create jobs in your cities. And that's something that anyone can get behind, regardless of what side of the aisle that you're on. So that's what we did. And Sujay, you and team went and found the most amazing women. And we're getting ready for this.
Yeah, many of you have heard of our She for PPE. You've seen flyers go around, and we were trying to recruit women who were interested in starting a distributorship. So Ivy has a distributorship enterprise. And so we found 25 women who are being interviewed as we speak, and they're going to be trained by EBW Cares with startup funds and no fees out of their pockets. And by September 11th, we're going to have 25 new business owners, distributors of PPE equipment, which is so timely for what's happening in the world. every newscast says, hospitals are short on PPE, schools that are reopening are short on PPE. So you're going to have a she who can supply the PPE. I mean, it's amazing. So I want to thank you. She came with a check too. So for those who are corporate leaders who are watching, she came with a check and with training and with startup fees and all of that. Because if you're going to help people not only have a job, but create a business, like she said, you have to be there to undergird and support till we get on our feet. So I want to thank you. We're going to have 25 new She for PPE distributors by September 11th. So I want to thank you in terms of that. But it's amazing. So we've learned about relationships. We've learned about realigning some things. But we've also learned, if you're going to have an ask, be direct about it. And have an ask. If somebody asks you a question, have an ask directly for what you really want. So you have to think it through. So because you have to have an opportunity to raise your question. And so you create an opportunity. We're talented, but you also want opportunities. So what are the basics? Would you would say some people are working a job, but they're also interested in starting a business. What are the basics? Start Business 101, Startup 101, the things you have to have in your own life and in business that you can do to start a business.
Well, it's the first one, and I know you've got your list too. I mean, the first thing that I'm going to say is just a level of faith. That, like, first and foremost, and when I say a level of faith, in starting a business, we're being asked to jump off a cliff and pray that our wings grow on the way down.
Yeah.
And along with that comes this level of trust. And actually, and Sujay, as I'm saying that, I'm reflecting back on when you asked me to speak, which I love. I just so love your WOW conference. I can't wait to do it again. And we talked about, as a business owner, you're really a bridge to helping who your customers are, your supporters are, get from point A to point B, whether it's you're selling PPE and getting them back to work safely or their kids to school safely, or you're consulting with them or you're coaching them to the next level. And the call is really to be a bridge. And where that ties even into this level of faith is a bridge all stands for something. So it's A, ask, B, believe, R, receive, I am. Okay. And the piece that becomes really where people fall off the bridge is the D part, because that's the do part, because it's when we start activating and doing and things start going sideways. We're not sure what to do. We get scared. And so we retreat and you fall off the bridge. So we know it's just part of it. So it's just get back on the bridge, keep moving forward. G is give, and then E is forevermore. Now, along that do part, back to Sujay's specific question is, you start with faith, but then the second thing, and the second most important thing, and in a hardcore business environment, I already always talk about my faith, but it's having the right mentor.
Thank you. Yes.
Having the mentor that's going to say, not just listen and give some feedback, but roll up their sleeves and actually help you. Being surrounded with those like-minded thinkers. That's why the Global Black Women's Chamber of Commerce and, Sujay extending the invitation, sit at our table, and me saying, come sit at my table and let's learn from each other and let's integrate even more effectively is so important, because it's in that like-minded thinking that, especially on those tough days when you feel like you're alone, you're going to be able to elevate and escalate through. And then finally, and I've could go on to this for a while, but I would say, really think about, Sujay, at going back to the example we gave on when I asked Sujay, what can we do? Sujay's been working on what her intention in the world is for a long time. And so she was able to pause in that moment, not just blurt something out, but pause in a moment and say, here's what I need to move forward. And similarly, that leadership lesson is, what is it that you're authentically really called to do in the world? And take that moment of pause, Selah, which is the key name of Sujay's WOW conference, Selah by the Sea. But take that moment of pause to really, really own that. And from that place going, okay, I need to believe, I need to have a mentor, like-minded group of people, but then you need to have a game plan. And know that the game plan you have if you just write down a plan, you don't tie it to timeline and deliverables, it becomes an art project or a hobby. So it's critical to put timeline and deliverables, knowing that it's never going to execute out in the exact way you think the wheels are going to fall off. You got to regroup. But when you have a plan of where you're headed, you can, with mentor, faith, like-minded group of thinkers, you're going to make it to that other side if you don't give up. And I'm sorry, you're here. I don't have two-legged babies. I have four-legged babies. You can hear them.
Well, it's okay, because everywhere you call now, they said there may be animals or babies in the background. So you have both, but no, I think your point is very important. I would say faith, fortitude, find the niche, that whatever the void is that's missing, because that's really where a business comes in, and then be the bridge. And then I like to say, the DSMOG principles is what I came up with. You have to, in this area, you have to digitize, energize, strategize, which is her game plan, monetize and mentorize, get a mentor and monetize. Then you have to organize, but just organize your thoughts into that game plan. Don't just jump out there because you're excited. Globalize, which is the Global Black Women's Chamber of Commerce. We're touching women all over the world. And then I have 2 G's. The last one is glamorize, because you have to look the part. You can't, like, you've been on TV and we're doing this. How many Zooms have we done this week? But you can't get on there with rollers in your head and just like waking up and taking sleep out of your eyes. You always have to be ready for public presentation. And that's what my company, Charisma Speaker, does, is preparation for powerful presentations, because you have to look the part if you're going to really strive in this era, whether it's virtual, and especially if it's in person, they can see everything. Virtually, we're fortunate because they can only see you from here up. They have no idea what's on the bottom, and I won't stand up at all. They have no idea what's on the bottom, but you have to look from here up. You have to look the part. No cleavage, your makeup has to be at least decent, your hair has to be together. If you wear glasses, have them clean. If you don't wear glasses, be able to see. I mean, all of the things, the little things that are really big things that make a difference, your background and your foreground. So I think that's really important. So if you had to say faith plus A plus B plus C equals starting a strong business or start having a strong foundation, what would be your A is faith? What are your B, C, and D?
Well, B, C, and D. I mean, and I loved listening. I'm like, well, if you just say A, so A is the faith and B is the mentorship. So then 3 could just be the DSMOG, because I totally agree with what you just said. And that like lets you like, you know, get like 5 or 6 points in there. And that really equals success. But the hard work, the perseverance, I can tell you from my own experience, and I know, Sujay, this is true for you too. I mean, people look at some of the successes that we've had and they're like, man, they're really lucky. And yes, we are blessed, lucky, fortunate. Okay, what they don't hear about is there's moment in time being broken, homeless, living out of my car, but being able to go from there and building a multi-billion-dollar venture. You know, these things don't happen overnight. It happens from sticking with it when the rest of the world says no. But part of that, and I do want to, your idea of glamorize for a moment, and if Rhonda's on here listening, she's been talking, we need a little more Hollywood in here. And we joke about it, but there's so much truth to that, because think about Ambassador Sujay. Do you think that President Clinton or President Obama would invite somebody to represent everything that they're about if they're all about, when you reach this level, I don't want to say they're all about, but in large part, it's risk mitigation. Exactly. So when you risk mitigate, you hire who are the best people, who are the thought leaders, who's going to show up well. Exactly. So that when we're in those conversations, they're going to hear Sujay, they're going to see everything, you know, but the package adds up. Exactly. And in that, you get that invitation to the table. My husband, there was a point when I first started with Dell and was, you know, a very high profile position. And I had this moment early on because it was just a lot of stuff, neat opportunities coming. And he said, I want you to remember, and God bless my husband. I mean, he's such a supporter and all of that, great man. Okay. And he's like, I'm going to make sure my wife has a piece of humble pie every once in a while so that her head doesn't get bigger than her britches. And he was like, look, let's be honest. this actually has nothing to do with you, which on that hand, I'm going to say, yes, it does. It has everything to do with each one of us. No one is you. That is your power. We've already covered that. But he said, the thing that he said that stuck with me in alignment with what Sujay just said is, do you think that Michael Dell would enable you to come in as the first entrepreneur in residence, as a spokesperson for a $67 billion company with 110,000 employees, if you didn't have this and this and this
Exactly.
and this?
Exactly.
And he knew when you show up, you're going to show up well, and
Exactly.
you're going to perform. They're risk mitigating. So
exactly. Yeah, Paula Giddings, who's one of my sorors in Delta Sigma Theta, wrote a book, When and Where I Enter. And you have to, I'm in cabinet meetings at some point. I'm sitting with national security advisors at some point. I'm sitting with other ambassadors from around the world. And you can't go into the room if, number one, they vet you in terms of your background. So you want to make sure your background is clear and straight. But then when you are finally vetted, after they've gone to all of your schools, all of the places you've lived, looked at all of your credit information, then they're going to say, how does she look? Can she sit? If I have to walk out of the cabinet meeting, can I leave her in there and know that she can handle herself? And it's not going to embarrass me. Her grammar is going to be correct. I would just say, for business people, your grammar, social media is one medium, and you can kind of shortcut and do your little ebonics and whatever the words are. You can put U for YOU. But when you go into the rooms, you better know your English, you better know your grammar, you better know how to your pronunciation and your presentation are so powerful, and you have to make sure that those are together. And I want to say, there's not a day that we don't stop learning. Even though we've arrived at our various places and we've been in some wonderful places, there's not a day I'm not on Zoom or on a webinar or reading something that takes me to another level. Because I'm a boomer. I was not born in the social media generation. So I'm constantly having to learn new things. And I know some days I'm jacked up. So I hire someone who can do those areas. So I want to just stress that you can ask your questions also. Angela Sims, who's our producer, is going to come on at 20 minutes of the hour. But please put your question in the chat box, and we'd love to have your question. So Angela, when it's 20 of, please just come on and let us know when we have some questions ready to receive. But
can I ask you a question?
Sure, please.
Yeah. So what I'm so curious about, because you asked me about starting EBW, you and I have had some deep conversations about this, and that is sort of like, it's possible for anyone, okay, to elevate to this fullest potential, but it's not always and most often going to be an easy journey, especially when you're breaking out of a mindset or a circumstance or a situation. And what I'm curious about is, like, Sujay, you have accomplished what so many of us can only dream of. And I'm like, what were as you were going up that ladder, like, how the heck did you become an ambassador? And, what were you telling yourself on this journey that, like, I can do it? I can do this. Like, what were your success strategies to be like, I deserve to be at this table and I'm going to make this happen?
That's great. Well, another R was relentless. I did not stop growing ever. So whether I was skipped in school like 2 grades, finally my parents were like, she can't be skipped anymore because she's not developmentally there. But I was always relentless. Reading, always surrounded by successful people. So the churches we went to as I was growing up, the people, they were the emerging Black middle class. So the first judges, the first Black doctors were all in worship with us. And they would have conversations with me as though I were an adult. So it was never, did you read a Dr. Seuss book? It was, what college are you going to? So from the age of 4 and 5 and 6, it was never, failure was not an option. Success was all that we were always aiming for. So it was and they mentored us. So they would take me out to lunch in high school, take me out to lunch in college. What are you thinking? What's your mindset? Who are you surrounding yourself with? So that in my church world, in my play world, it was always surrounded by people who were going places, and to avoid the people who were not going places, because that energy also pulls you down as well. And then I think some people are called to be trailblazers. So being the first Black woman in the American Baptist churches to have a church, to be the first Black woman to be a chaplain in the police department, to be the first Black woman to be head of the largest gathering of clergy in the world, the Hampton Ministers Conference. I think each rung of the ladder, you're going higher, but each rung prepares you for the next one. And I think, there's a scripture, basically, if you can't handle the small things, you're not going to be given the bigger things. And so I think you have to do things well where you are, and not always look at where I'm going. And when I get there, no, handle where you are well. People see that. And then other relationships develop as a result of that. And people want to be near you because they see that you've done well. So I think you're called to be trailblazers. I think you're called to handle what you've given. But this is the S I talked about last week on my Sundays with Sujay, which is on Facebook. I said one of the S's is you have to stay in your lane. You can't be all over the place. We're multi-talented, we're multi-gifted, but you have to know what your strengths are and really run with that. So what would you say your strengths are and your skill set?
Wow. Well, and I'm just so, listening to that. Are you all that so inspired by this too? Which, by the way, can I just add one? I will answer that. I know you all listening are probably like, just answer the question. And I will, but I do want to put a cherry on top of two things you said. Okay. I even think, so coming into and being very successful financially, I think those moments, and it's happened a few times in my life, thank God, in the rearview mirror, but those moments of being broke, I grew up in a great family, a wonderful family, but it was almost like God had to take me down to less than zero to be like, now what is she going to do? Yes. Is she going to give up? Or as I start making money again, is she going to splurge? So to your point, and it is biblical references to that, like what do you do with what you are given? Yes. And it was almost like this painfully awful periods of being like, I don't have anything to work with. And it's like, and this is what you have. And what are you going to do? Exactly. And I really do believe, and I would say, and I don't know if she's on here, I would imagine she is, my EA of 10 plus years, Pam Pike. I often have said to Pam, I was like, Pam, these moments of things being really, really tight, I said, I just promise you, and I know in my gut this is happening, because when the onflow comes with more money than we even know what to do with, we're going to be ready to know exactly what to do with it. Exactly. And that's part of it. And on the trailblazer front, one other analogy there, because I just happened to be on the phone with her early this morning. So a friend of both Ambassador Sujay's and mine is the woman who was the first female coach of the NFL, Dr. Jen Welter.
Oh, I love her.
I love her too.
Shout out to Jen.
Jen, we love you. Jen, she's got to get on here too. I mean, she's just talk about busting through glass ceilings to be the first in the NFL. But she's the one that would talk. She had this analogy around trailblazers. We both were having this crappy day one day 2 years ago or so. And she was like, you know what, Ivy? We just have to remember we're trailblazers. And in being trailblazers, she goes, remember this visual. We're running down a path that doesn't exist, full of rose bushes, prickly everywhere. And she goes, we're running and we're getting slapped by the branches and the rose bushes are cutting us, and boom, 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 boom. And finally we break through the other side, and you look behind and you've now created the path for everybody else, but you're all beaten up and bloodied. And she goes, that's part of the journey. And I was like, wow.
That's a great analogy. And it's not just being the first. I think this is really important. It's being the first of many. So that Jen, like there are coaches now that are getting a lot of accolades in press and commercials, but Jen paved the way for there to be other female coaches. You're paving the way for there to be other entrepreneurs in residence and EBW founders and whatever. And I think that that's really what's important, that we're getting bloodied, and that's a wonderful analogy, and we are getting pricked all along the way. There are times that we're shut out of rooms. We're not always invited to the table. There are times there's sexism, as well as, for me, sexism, racism, and ageism. You know, my first church, I was 26 years old in a church of senior citizens who looked at me and said, my kids are your age, my grandkids are your age. And I was like, yes, but I'm your pastor. And so you have to have that authority, kind of like you're shaking in your pants and you're like, shoot. But you say, with authority, I was prepared for this moment, and I'm here in this moment, and we're going to do something with this moment I've been given. So 15 people in a church that seated 1,100. You can look at it as saying, I got the crappiest church in the whole denomination, or you could say, there's so much potential here that we're going to go from 15 to 150, which we did in 6 months. Then we're going to go from 150 to 1,500, which we did in about 6 years. So it's about your perspective. You know, what is your perspective? How do you look at things? And I think the other R for me is reciprocity, because it's not always about what can I receive. I have had wonderful mentors and wonderful people around me, but it's also about, Ivy invited me to the UN and opened the door. Then I can invite her to my conference. We're taking some risks because we don't know each other that well, but because our spirits connected, and because this is a real R that I want to make sure, your reputation preceded you. Your track record preceded you. So that with that, I can take certain risks. Number one, I was introduced to her by someone that I admire and respect. And then the second thing is, her track record and her reputation preceded her in all of the places that she landed. Whether it was hard or not hard, she left an impeccable record. And I think that that's so important, whether you're starting a new business, a small business, and you want to scale it. What did you do with what you had when you had something in your hands? So Angela's on, our wonderful producer, and I hope there's some questions for us in the chat box. So
yes, there are.
Okay, so we want to introduce our producer, and we're going to give a shout out to Linda Pringle Evans, who's she's on my board for Global Black Women's Chamber, and she's the Dean of International Education for EBW Cares. So shout out to Linda Pringle Evans. Angela, what's our first question today?
First of all, this is incredible, ladies. Thank you so much. So our first question today comes from Christine Powers. And Christine wants to know, how do you find the right person to partner with?
Oh, great question.
And another R.
Yes.
Right. You want to go for it? Yeah. Oh, so good.
So how would you answer that?
Well, I'm like, Christine, are we like having a mind meld right here? Because you nailed it in saying that. You know, a couple of years ago, both CJ and I, we do a lot of global speaking, and I was talking about whatever I was talking about. But the thing that stuck out in my mind, and I've never forgotten that, is prior to that, people would talk about, you know, here's how you find partners. Here's how you find investors. Here's how you find clients. And you nailed it on the head, when there's a big difference between finding that and finding the right one.
Yeah.
And key to that strategy, because you get the wrong one. I mean, I've experienced that. We've got one thing happening right now that it's not the right deal. And we're having to deal with that. And it's taking a lot of time, energy, and resources of our business to take care of that. And so how do you find the right one? And this goes back to what Sujay said before. And that is, you know, here at our team at EBW, and I know we share this with Sujay, but we talk about operating with integrity, transparency, authenticity. You hear me talking about my faith, so that never at any point is there a question about where's this stuff coming from. Like when you just deal in truth, and you deal from a place of love, and you deal from a place of saying, hey, I screwed up and I'm sorry. And I think this is a way to fix it. Because even to what also Sujay's saying, the reputation's so important. And when you're an innovator, you're taking leaps of faith on things that many times haven't been done before. Mistakes are going to happen. And so it's, how do you address that and come back to the table? And I think it's it all comes down to that trust, and trust is built on simply, and this is why God says, our words are just so incredibly powerful. Speak to the mountain and tell it to move, and it'll move, because it's in, does what you say match up to what you do? And in that place, and always making that priority in the conversations from day one, that really like aligned from that place. And that's where you start finding who is the right person. Because I tell you, I remember an early on investor meeting. Thank God, this was before I realized this stuff. And I'm sitting in a board meeting with all these venture capitalists. And I made this comment about a deal that I thought we should be doing. And he says to me, oops, sorry. Okay, you can hear. And I said, guys, my gut is just telling me this isn't the right thing to do. We really should be doing this. And that guy literally got up on the table, leaned over in my face, laughed at me, things different. And he goes, I don't care what your gut says. The money tells us this, and we're going to do this. And he was operating from a place of money first, not integrity first. And the deal went sideways. But that's the kind of stuff. Come from that place and find the right partner.
I think your question, does what you say match what you do, is so appropriate. And don't underestimate, we call it the sixth sense, but don't underestimate, women, that gut, because that is spirit working in you saying it doesn't feel right. And if it doesn't feel right, it won't fit right. And so you have to really, don't underestimate that, but do your due diligence. This is not the first deal, and you can say, I need 24 hours, I need 48 hours, I'll get back to you next week, because do your due diligence. You guys have the internet. We had to go through encyclopedias to try to find some history on this person. But do your due diligence. Try to find out. That's what vetting is. Try to find out if there's anything that did not go right, because you can always find out the things that do go right, but find out if there's something that did not go right. And then you also mentioned something about apologize. As a business person, as a businesswoman, don't be afraid to say, I'm sorry, or I messed up, because you will get more respect in that. But if you go and act like nothing ever happened and people know something very wrong did happen, then they don't have the respect for you. So apologies are necessary. Thank you for that question. Is there another, Angela?
Yes, there is. So we have a question from Kim Williams. Kim's question is, how do you shift your mindset from working to fulfill someone else's purpose to living your own purpose?
Oh, great question, Ingrid.
You want to, yeah.
Yeah, I've decided through all my life experiences that I'm going to live my own purpose. You can only be true to yourself, really. You're given gifts and talents. And so in your young life, you have to work your summer jobs, and all of that's giving you experience. You have to work the summer jobs. You have to work for someone else. I worked for my parents' business. And my parents, I told you I'm a third generation business owner. So they started their business in our home when I was 5. So I came out of college and tried to work with it again because it had been my summer job, but it was not my calling. So I set it up so that my mother could run it and my brother could run it, but I also had to find my walk. And if you're not true to yourself, you're going to be frustrated for the rest of your life. So my ministry now is wealth and wellness for my people. Those are the things I do well. Those are the things I'm compassionate and passionate about. And so anything that falls under that umbrella is my ministry. Now, there are thousands of other things I could do, but these are the things I feel called to and that I will do well. And so part of that ministry of wealth is creating the Global Black Women's Chamber of Commerce. The ministry of wellness is my WOW retreat, making sure that other women leaders like myself have a chance to balance their lives and not fall apart. Because many of the women who started as trailblazers with me died or are very sick. And so if your health is not good, you don't have wealth and you don't have the opportunity to have wealth. So those are the things that are important to me. How would you answer that, Ingrid?
I just, oh, so inspired listening to you. And I would just offer back to that, like even the question being asked, I would imagine, and maybe I'm wrong, but I would imagine, there's party that's like, but I know what I'd like to do, or I'm figuring that out and I'm not doing what I want to do. And where I invite you to just gift yourself a moment to go to a quiet place and really reflect on, first of all, are you really clear on what it is that you want to do? And if that answer is yes, great. And if it's not, let's start there. Okay. And then, as you heard Sujay talking about, as she was growing up, she had to take the summer jobs and all that. So let's say you're in a place where you're broke. Okay. And you're unhappy. You're trying to figure out how you're going to feed your kids, pay your light bills. You might have a side hustle, or you might have a job, whatever that is. Okay. As you come to acknowledging that authentic call that's been placed on your life, part of that is going back to what we talked about before, being a bridge and having a plan to get to that other side. Part of that is, hey, let me get on top of my finances so I can breathe a little bit more. And it's from that place, to just put in context the crappy job that you might have, and I'm projecting here, I don't know. But if you're in a place that you're not happy, you're working for somebody else, like, okay, that job though is beginning to fulfill what you've now identified. Hey, I want to make some income. Is this the right place to generate income? No. Okay, so how do I get to the right place? And then begin looking for people like Sujay, or even I challenge myself to, even with our anyone that joins our team, I always say, and it's hard sometimes to say, because when I get in my selfish mode, I'm like, I love you people, I want you to be with me forever. But the reality is, when I'm just upfront with them and say, give me the best of, first of all, where are you? What do you want to accomplish? How does that marry with what we want to do? And then give me the best of what you got. And think about us as a lily pad. And if you give me the best what you got, I'm going to give you the best of what I've got. And at some point, you're going to jump to the next lily pad. And when you surround yourself with people of that mindset, people doing big things in the world are simply trying to connect with other people doing big things in the world. And whether it's for us, Sujay, you've said this to me, whether it's for a lifetime or a season or whatever, that's its purpose. So I encourage you to just come from a place of gratitude and appreciation that you're solving an issue right now that might not be the right fit, but it's getting you to where you ultimately want to go. And when you come from that place, then all of a sudden like attracts like, and you're going to start seeing yourself progress to where you want to go.
Well said. And there's another art, because employers have to be able to release people to their next season, because you can't hold somebody so tight that it's not working for you or them any longer. It's painful. So release people. Like you said, give me the best you've got now. I'll give you the best I have, and we'll put that together. And when you're starting to feel that restlessness, another R, that means, it's time to kind of move on. And you also said something that's very important, and particularly for Black women business owners, is the word finances. Susie Orman says, have 6 months of your earnings together. I say for Black women, have a year's supply, which allows you to be free enough to make some moves, because we have to take care of our families. In many instances, we have to take care of our community. So you want to make sure you have enough to not be just bogged down because of money, because that's not a freeing place. But many of the moves I made were because my parents put me in a position to be financially independent at a young age, which meant I could move around. I could try this job, say, no, that wasn't it for me. I was a television producer. I went here, I went there. But it was because I had financial freedom. And if there's anything I want to stress, Susie Orman is that the person who tells you how to save your money. I'm the person who tells you how to manage it and strategize with your money. And so make sure you have enough to live on and thrive on. You don't want to just survive. You want to thrive. And that part of that is being financially independent. Do we have time for one more question, Angela?
Yes, just one more. And this lady seems really excited. Tanya Avery from Houston, Texas. Ingrid, this question is for you. She mentions how you talked about that you tried to dude up. And she mentioned she's in her 40s and a solopreneur, never married. So the question comes again, how do you balance the professional woman with the personal woman, even when you were trying to dude up? How'd that work out personally?
Oh, wow. Great question.
That is a great question. Well, first of all, it didn't work out. That's why I came back to this, because it was horrible. Because as it is, for women entrepreneurs, we say the biggest thing that holds us back is lack of access to capital. That's actually not the truth. And we know from experience, that's another story for another day. It's actually our self-confidence. And it's also, as Ambassador Sujay knows her too, Pat Pearson writes about stop self-sabotage. We're either afraid of our own real success or we're afraid of failure. And so that confidence thing is a real thing. And that's where your faith and the mentorship and the like-minded groups are also so important. But I had great mentors, but they were these guys. And thank God I had the help. But the reality of it is, when I went through that, I was lacking in confidence, first of all. Then when I tried to look like a dude, and I don't make a good dude. When I was a teenager, I did, which was another story, and that was awful. But I completely lost my confidence. And then I was completely ineffective.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, getting a little echo. So to bring it back, it really is, and I will come from that place of, again, coming back to great leaders and people doing big things in the world. They want to see you show up and shine in your fullest potential, your fullest beauty. People who do big things in the world want to be around people doing big things in the world. And that means you show up, again, fullest possibility and potential. You're bringing the ideas that the rest of the world is going to think are crazy, that you're going to feel uncomfortable. So get comfortable being uncomfortable. But allow yourself to be like, if I'm going to sit at the table with a president or with Michael Dell, like, okay, what do I have to lose? Mm-hmm. Right? Seriously, what do you have to lose? Come and bring your best self and everything that represents, and bring your ideas to the table, because it's in those innovative ideas that's when somebody gives you that yes, and you start collaborating like Sujay and I are. That's when you start moving things forward. That's when you have the possibility and potential to move the world forward. And don't worry about all that other stuff. Easier said than done, I know. And that's why, again, this group, Global Black Women's Chamber of Commerce, our collaboration together is so important, because we get it. And those moments are not fun, but it's a critical part of the learning journey. And but now you ask the question, and the answer is that simple. So own it and go for it. Because you're going to do it.
Make a U-turn, I like to say, a Y-O-U turn. It's your turn. Make a U-turn. You've been listening to Ingrid Vanderveldt. We could go on for days, because that's how much we really love each other. And this such a great conversation. But you've been listening to Conversations with Sister CEOs, the power of partnerships, the power of relationships. We thank you for joining us. How can they find you, Ingrid, on the internet? Where can they find you?
Yes, if you come to EBW2020.com, that's all the information there. Contact information is all there, and we welcome you to come there. And go to Global Black Women's Chamber of Commerce, because Please. You go there, we're right there. And all of this work we're doing it side by side and locked arms with Sujay. So if you want to get together with me or with us, that's where I am and that's where she is. And come and be part of that. And Sujay, you're just amazing and so loved.
You're super amazing. I love you so much. Come to globalblackwomencc.org. That stands for Chamber of Commerce, globalblackwomencc.org. Some of those names I didn't know. Please join us. We have a pre-Labor Day discount for you to be a founding member, be part of our founders circle before we launch officially. And if you ever need a speaker virtually or in person, that's my gift. Come to charismaspeakers.com, because you need a speaker with charisma. We are delighted to have you. Stay with us the next 5 weeks for Conversations with Sister CEOs, 12 noon Eastern Standard Time on livewithsujay.com. Like us, share us, comment, and subscribe if you're not a member of YouTube. Thank you so much for joining us. It's been my delight. And thank you, Angela Sims, for being our producer. God bless you, and God bless America.